here at Propel, we quite often talk about rubbish in, rubbish out when it comes to performance marketing. As AI algorithms take more and more of the heavy lifting out of campaign management, and as humans we do less and less work, the data that we feed those algorithms is becoming more and more important. So we're here today with Dan from Duga Digital, who play a huge role in making sure that the data that we feed these algorithms is of the highest standard it can be. So Dan, I don't know if you want to give us a 30-second elevator pitch about yourself and Duga Digital and the work that we do together.
Sure. Thank you for having me. So we are a measurement and data specialist. In 2026, that basically means feeding the right algorithms with the right signals, as you said, and that's quite complex. I always talk about the digital data thread that runs through the world, and that can be all the way from marketing through consent, through website data, app data, and then purchase and transaction data. Ultimately, how we use that and what it means for businesses, that's where we operate. Don't do any paid search. We'll leave that to you, excellent people, and hopefully help you with how we manage that and measure it ultimately.
Cool. Okay, nice. So I think it's pretty fair to say that the world, or the worlds that we live in now, are pretty black box compared to how they used to be, right? In that you've got an algorithm that's doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you, and you don't necessarily always know what it's doing within Google Ads, but it's heavily reliant on the data that you feed it.
Yep.
But sort of taking a step back from that, how do you see that play out from a commercial perspective with clients around the sort of visibility of data that they have and the importance of the data that you're feeding in?
I think it comes back to confidence and trust. Ultimately, clients are trusting agencies and agents like us to be able to deliver them the outcomes they're looking for as a business. The algorithms don't necessarily speak in business language. They don't necessarily understand that language, and why would they? They're formulas at the end of the day, really. So yeah, we have to feed it the right kind of data, but we also have to be asking the right kind of questions in order to know what kind of data to be able to lead it. So there's kind of a multi-layered approach underneath it. It's sold as this new sort of one-click or easy one algorithm. This is the best way. This is the best solution. But ultimately, there's so much underneath it that you can get wrong, you can get right, and it can go in many different directions. So I think that it's mostly change management from a people perspective, because historically it's been done the same way for 15, 20 years now. That's kind of relearning for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And over a short space of time as well.
I think that point on trust is a really interesting one, because it's one thing you can control, right? The data that you put in, there's so much of it that you can't control, and as humans we love to control things, don't we? And the fact that we've slowly lost more and more control over the management of a campaign over time, actually the data that you feed in, not only is it super important that it's reliable, but it's actually something that you can control.
Yeah.
And that's where you build the trust in that. It's the only thing you can trust, isn't it? You have to trust that Google are doing their thing, but then you also have to have absolute trust in that one thing that you can control as well.
Absolutely. And in the trust is also with the platforms, right? So you've kind of got, if you look at Donald Trump's inauguration, I think it was Meta, Microsoft, Google, maybe another one, were all in the front row, like the heads were all in the front row of even ahead of the senators, and you go, that's a really powerful statement as to how much power they wield over the world. That's a trust signal, as well as on a daily basis, what am I getting back from the platform I'm putting in? So I think we as a collective have got probably three main stakeholders in most of the businesses we talk to. We've got CFOs, because they're the ones putting money in, or finance directors or whoever. They're the ones sort of saying, right, here's the money, go and do stuff with it. You've got marketing managers who ultimately want to see a return for that, because they want to be seen to be doing well and making sure that campaigns work for the business. And then you've got analytics people and data people who want to understand, okay, what data am I getting out of this back into the business that can give me a bit more context? And that can go loads of different ways and loads of different directions. And so that piece about trust is kind of change management, I think. And that's where things are changing really rapidly right now. I mean, off air we were talking about lots of cool tech. It gets harder to trust it because people can see less of it, and it's just happening on a whim. And that, I think a lot of people struggle with that. I definitely do, because it's changing day by day almost.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it? So I guess before we sort of talk about the different solutions that we work on together to make sure that we've got the best quality data possible,
Yep.
I guess it's kind of interesting to talk about, I guess, how the algorithms actually work and why it is so important that you feed the right data signals in.
Yeah. Where to start? I guess the algorithms themselves are rules based, and we have to try and hit as many criteria within that as possible.
Glorified pattern spotters.
Glorified pattern spotters is, yeah, maybe that's true. But we're definitely feeding signals from different directions, trying to create like a whole shape. I kind of look at it as a bit like filling in a jigsaw. You can, after a while, you know what the jigsaw might look like, but you've still got missing gaps and you've still got pieces that aren't fully there. And if you can get a more rounded view, or give that more rounded view to these algorithms and platforms, then hopefully you are in a better position to create, better outcomes in terms of revenue or whatever your objective is. But yeah, glorified pattern spotters might be a better term for it.
But out of the box, if you think about the way that Google would have you set up Google Analytics or Google Ads or Meta anything, you've got standard events that would say, go and track a lead, go and track a purchase, go and track. And I guess if that in itself is a level above not having anything, right? Like that's a good place to be. If you're tracking your leads, you're tracking your purchases, that's kind of like the minimum foundation that you need. But I guess that's where a lot of advertisers stop, I find, in the complexity with the data. You do the out of the box thing, you tick the box, right? We're tracking a purchase, we're tracking a lead. And quite often that doesn't give you the right business context. If that's the thing that you're feeding the pattern, and that's the pattern or the algorithm, and that's the patterns it's looking for, it's just going to do that thing, isn't it? And that might not be what the business actually wants. The business might want not just purchases from new customers, or not just leads, high quality leads, that kind of thing. And that doesn't, the platforms, they don't necessarily encourage you to do that out of the box, do they?
No, I think there's very much a cookie cutter approach to it, and like everyone's the same. To a degree, you kind of understand why. They're global platforms. There are millions, if not billions, of websites at this point. You think about the amount of out-of-home Shopify brands that have just spun up in the last 5 years, probably huge amounts. I don't have any stats on that, but like they're just got to be. And like you say, they've got these integrations that are just easy, one click. You can do this. This will be here. This is your analytics. But what that does do is then say, right, here's all that data for Google, Meta, and they can see what's going on. So yeah, there's benefits to it. There's also massive drawbacks because they're never going to get the customization that they need.
So if the ad platforms are only tracking the cookie cutter conversions, the type of KPIs and metrics that you can work towards then lend themselves towards like a CPA or a ROAS or things like that. And so often we've audited accounts where the agency doesn't have the business context. So the main complaint will be, the agency's telling me that the ROAS has gone up, but I know that that's loss making, which in the agency's defense, if that's all the data that they've been given access to and that's all being tracked in the platform, they are just doing their job.
Yep.
But that's where you need to take it beyond just, let's just track purchases and revenue, and how do you move it beyond just a simple ROAS to a useful business metric, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So a good example of this is we've worked on clients together where we've looked at things like profitability per product or per category or per segment or whatever it might be, and making sure that the platform sees that, because it's only seeing one value. You might as well make it the most important value for them. The other one we always look at, especially for retailers, is inventory. Like how can we talk about stock levels, and how can we only target products or brands that have got stock available, rather than thinking everything's up for grabs and then you're actually wasting money because someone gets to the site and they find that they're not going to get the thing they're expecting. So yeah, that management of feeds, management of products, all important.
Yeah. And I guess it kind of comes back to the problem then, of that's where your guys' role primarily comes in, isn't it? Is you're kind of the link between the business problem and the guys like us that are running the campaigns, because we're only as good as the data that we've got access to, and we're only as good as the data that the ad platforms receive. And if we can't see profitability, or we can't see new customer, or we can't see lead quality because it's not in the ad platform, we can't really be expected to optimize towards it. So like, what do you, how do you guys approach that? I guess when you're sort of taking on a new project and you kind of look that it's only got this cookie cutter approach. What's the steps that are needed to get it from being cookie cutter to something more advanced that marketing teams can properly work with?
So I think the first part is top down, which is like what's the ultimate goal here? What's going to drive business performance? What are we actually trying to get to as a business? What are they investing money towards that they're expecting back out? Which can give some vague answers, but that's fine. Like we want to grow more revenue, but then you can ask the question: okay, which products do you want to grow more revenue on? Do you want to buy? Are you trying to acquire new customers, or are you trying to, reinstate old ones? What does the buying cycle look like? How can we sort of work with that? So, as an example, we started to do a bit of work with car dealerships because there's this whole gap, and we'll come on to offline in a minute, but there's this whole gap where someone clicks on an ad for a car, you might not see them again until the showroom. They might buy that car, but you can't necessarily create the connection. So I said top down. You also then have to take from what they say in that sort of higher up segment or the strategic segment. You can then say, right, okay, that needs to play out in these ways, bottom up. So these are the things we need to tag. These are the things we need to look at for criteria, thresholds we need to meet, and just be really comfortable with this is how we can get that data to the platforms in order to try and surface some of the things that have been talked about as like a North Star or major objective.
That's it. And in terms of like the most common problems, so like there's loads of reasons why you might not have that data in there. There's, for a start, the client might just not want to give it to you, right?
Yeah,
that's quite common. Quite often people can be the problem or processes. But I guess from a more sort of technical standpoint, what do you usually find are the biggest blockers that are preventing businesses going from beyond just basic cookie cutter to something a bit more advanced?
I think it comes back to that change management point of view. If they've not done it before, they get a bit worried by it. I'll give you an example. Last year, we integrated server-side tracking, which we'll talk about in a bit, for a retailer. And what that did was it gave Google and Meta the same number of conversions as each other, which for like 15 years we've been trying to do, right? Everyone like trying to get parity across the different platforms ultimately is really good. But what happened was the marketing manager had never bid with parity. So he came back and was like, I can't do this. I was like, what do you mean? He said, I need Facebook to be higher than Google, or I need the conversions not to match because I'm not confident in what I'm doing here. And it blew my mind. But it was because of the behaviours, because of the way that he'd worked for however long, he just didn't know how to operate. So I think there's a change management perspective on the technical side. So the implementation stuff, we always get pushback on, like, as soon as you say the word server, a lot of marketers get scared of that, which is completely fair.
Yeah, that scares me.
Yeah. But then if you add in some of the other pieces and the benefits, they're quite happy with it. So, yeah.
There's a couple of other topics that I want to cover as well in relation to that. So first one being all platforms measure differently as well. I think that's a real problem with understanding of data from businesses, is that they get scared when Google Analytics doesn't match Google Ads, which doesn't match Meta, which doesn't match internal CRM, e-commerce platform. Every single platform seems to be reporting on different numbers. And people see that as a problem. They don't necessarily look at it as, they don't try to understand why. And quite often it's just different ways of measuring. It's all coming from the same place, it's all coming from GTM, it's all coming from the website. Yep. It's all implemented in the exact same way. They've just got different ways of measuring things, don't they? Different attribution models, different rules.
Yeah, exactly that. And that is the kind of, I always say it's more a directional piece than it is an absolute guarantee, because you can't get perfect attribution. There's no way. If you have a certain type of product in a retail environment, for example, and you put on 30-day look back window for Facebook, it will try and claim everything.
Yep.
And so, which obviously is not realistic. That's not the reason that they necessarily came, but you can understand then that, okay, all of those purchases did interact with the Facebook advertising campaign at some point, which is great. That's helpful. That's good. You got to the people you're expecting to. But yeah, like you say, if there's an expectation that it's just going to tell me that's exactly where they came from,
yeah,
that it's the management of expectations. Like, what does the actual platform do? It distributes that advertising campaign. what does it do afterwards? Well, it's going to try and claim the credit because it wants to have you more money. It wants your revenue or it's your investment again.
And as long as all of the numbers are going up, right? That's the key. That's the key from our side. That's what I always say is like you've got to make sure that you've got to keep your eyes on the real money, the money that's going in the till, the money that's going through the e-commerce platform, wherever the real money actually lives.
Yeah.
As long as you're making the ad platform numbers go up and those numbers at the same time, it's good enough.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think as long as you've also got, like, as you say, that grasp on where do those platform numbers come from and how are they operating and what levers can you pull, that gives you more power. But if you're just taking them as read, that's tricky. Yeah. And that's where you're going to get into conversations that, with the CFO, like I mentioned before, where you're not going to have the right footing. That's going to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. Maybe one other thing as well that we see as sort of like common problems in trying to get the most accurate data as possible is around consent, specifically in the EU. Everything was a lot easier before GDPR came along, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah. It's been a long time and consent is still not done correctly. I mean, even just this morning coming in, I had a message from one of the team saying one of our clients has got, one of our new clients, I should say, we haven't acted with them yet, has consent banner code listed twice on their website, and it's blocking each other. I was like, that is a new one. Haven't had that before. But yeah, you're right. Consent is huge. It can impact the volume of data that's coming in, B, the quality of data that's coming in, and C, just understanding it. Because if it's not consented properly, you end up with a situation where none of the platforms know what's going on as well, and frankly it just messes things up. It's wild the amount of mess that it causes. It seems like an evergreen source of service for us.
Any kind of root cause analysis is the consent messed up.
That's one of the first ports call. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. As I said, my digital data thread is kind of external website, so offsite marketing data. What are we seeing for Google Ads, for example, or Meta? What's the consent doing? What's the on-site analytics doing? Does that match with any purchase or transactional data? And then how is it getting to those platforms? And is it doing what it's supposed to do?
Cool. So if we're in complete agreement that the cookie cutter approach isn't good enough and that we need to be going beyond that and that we need to be looking at things like qualified leads, real purchase revenue, new customer acquisition, profitability, all of those things. Yeah. I think one of the things that you guys have really helped us with over the last sort of 6 to 9 months is server-side GTM and the role that plays in kind of delivering that. But maybe just talk to us a little bit more about the tools that are available to enable advertisers to do that, because it's not out of the box. It's not simple. It is quite technical. So boil down the technical side of it in the most simple terms possible for us.
This is where I try and translate. So server-side GTM is a relatively old way of distributing code, but goes back to the principles of, can we make data volumes increase? Can we have more control over the data that is going into the ad platforms? And can we ultimately get a better quality of data because of those two things? So the difference is client-side data routes from the page load on the client's browser. Server-side is routed via a separate server, and the scripts run from there, and then they go into the third-party platforms. I think that's simple enough. But it is a challenge for a lot of marketers. They don't necessarily know what's actually happening under the hood. There's less understanding of HTML and ultimately how websites operate, and that is the fundamentals here. Why we do it is, as I say, to get that control back, and also because it's going via a separate server, we can use some of those tools that we talked about before in terms of profitability, inventory metrics, or whatever it needs to be to start pushing platforms in the right direction. Tools that we can do that, you can do this through things like Google Cloud or AWS or any sort of website hosting as well. Those are more technical, I will say that much. There are SaaS platforms like Stape, Addingwell, various others that allow you to host that and make it less technical, more of a click solution rather than multiple code and setup solution. But that depends on the scale, because cost and various technical people might need to be involved if it's GCP or AWS or anything like that. We partner with Adding World simply because they give us a very, very good basis. Things like alerts, things like event management, things like extension of cookie durations and things like that really help clients that you don't get out of the box with GCP.
So, and to go back to the kind of original discussion that we were having around algorithms doing so much of the heavy lifting, I think for us personally, the huge benefit that we see of server-side GTM is that, firstly, more data. More data fed to an algorithm. We have issues where campaigns don't have enough conversion data to get out of learning. Why would you not want to track more data to be able to speed up that process? And then I think the second thing is the point around quality of data as well. So not only is the data more reliable, but you can control and get those real business metrics in so that you're telling the algorithm to optimize to profit instead of revenue. And that's kind of like the key way of translating, I guess, the business strategy into the campaigns and telling the algorithms to optimize to the thing that's actually important. I think that's where we really see the value in terms of an ads point of view.
The other thing is you can send it to multiple platforms, same data. So where I said there was parity between Facebook and Google at last, that gives you a real opportunity to be able to, ultimately take control and use things like your CRM that aren't always used optimally in first-party data for various platforms.
Cool. And I guess we've seen real benefits of that as well. I think we've sort of seen clear use cases. So I guess to do a server-side GTM migration from standard GTM to server-side, there's a resource requirement in that. There's time, there's cost, there's fees, whatever. But I think we nearly always see positive ROI on that, right? And I think from a Propel perspective, when we're talking to near enough any advertiser these days, we see that as being the kind of gold standard of tracking. If you're not tracking everything via server-side GTM, then you're behind a bunch of other advertisers that could be doing it that way, and they're probably feeding better quality data to their algorithms, and therefore the campaigns are probably performing a bit better. So would you, based on your knowledge around the adoption of server-side GTM in the market, do you think that there's still a case of if you do have it and it is implemented well, you've got an advantage over your competitors?
Absolutely. I think a reasonable estimate would probably be maximum 10 to 15% of market penetration of SGTM. I think there is still lots and lots and lots and lots of opportunity to gain traction, to gain, as you say, data quality, and feed the algorithms better data. I haven't seen it take off the way I was expecting it to. To your point around some of the clients we've worked on together, we did some causal impact analysis recently, and I think we saw it was 27% uplift in session volumes for one of the bigger clients we work on together, and that fed then into platforms means that those platforms understand those sessions, they understand the metrics, they understand the business better, to be able to feed their own algorithms. So like you say, why wouldn't you? There's always a cost element to it, but I think as long as you've got a decent conversion rate, you should be able to trade that off. The business case can make itself quite quickly. I think there's definitely benefit to it still. It is now kind of table stakes. Like that's kind of the minimum, most robust level of doing that. And it does, the other part obviously is around ad blockers and things like that, which are causing challenges. I mean, ethically you could say it's not necessarily the best way of doing things. If I've got an ad blocker on, I don't necessarily want to be tracked. Or if I'm using Brave or Firefox, or maybe we'll cancel this bit out. Going into ethics rather than data. Who am I? So I think there's lots of benefit to it. To be fair, I think it's not like it's also kind of a once and done. It's not. Yeah. You're still upgrading it. You're still pushing new tags live. You might be moving into different channels. There's opportunity to test. You don't have to do it all at once as well. That's kind of the other thing, is you can have them both running parallel. So it gives you that opportunity to understand, okay, how does our business perform? For example, we did this with a few clients in the UAE, and they have very, very, very low numbers of people using ad blockers, whereas in this country it's like 16 to 20% of users are using ad blockers. The other benefit around it is speed of site. So by removing some of the scripts that are running on the site, you can increase your conversion rate. And I think Google did a study a while ago, which is for every 1 second of delay, mobile conversion rate is impacted by 20%, which is huge. If you're a retailer, well, actually, if you're any website selling anything, I don't know, you have to be a retailer, but that's going to be massive. That can really impact your bottom line.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the things that we always say is that to just maintain market share or to maintain the same level, you need to be constantly improving. Like if you're not constantly improving your performance marketing setup, then you're going backwards. There's an element of needing to continually improve just to tread water. And if you really want to get an advantage over your competitors, you need to be going above and beyond. You need to be making massive improvements. And I kind of feel like it's such an obvious one. If you haven't got server-side GTM, you're potentially leaving the 16 to 20% of traffic that's blocked via ad blockers. There is an opportunity to regain that data through server-side GTM. So granted, there's a cost to it, but it's also a really obvious tactical lever that you could deploy to make sure that you're continually improving, and your setup will just be a level up once it's done, compared to how you were before.
Yeah, you'll also have security in knowing where the data's going. That's the other thing. On client side, you're just effectively pinging random endpoints, and maybe 2 weeks later you come in and say, oh, there wasn't actually data flowing. Whereas, like I said, with the alert systems that are available in those SaaS platforms, you can have confidence in it. It gives that trust that we talked about right at the start.
That's it. So I guess thinking about some of the ways that we've sort of been able to unlock the black box algorithms per se by joining up the server-side GTM with either let's start with a CRM platform and then we'll move on to an e-commerce platform, but kind of key benefits and key use cases of joining SGTM with a CRM like a HubSpot or something like that. What additional information can that feed in that's really going to help both the optimization of the campaigns, but also the more sort of financial reporting that a CFO might want to see as well?
Yeah, I mean, at the end there, you kind of go, right, in CRM, I've got this customer, this transaction, but I might not have the ideal route to transaction there. So I might not know which campaign has done anything to help me. I might not have any traffic source data. I might not even know necessarily whether on a mobile or on desktop. So if you can connect those two things, then you actually expand that data set and you start understanding that customer base a bit more. You might know whether they're new or not. Now you can start passing that data around. So SGTM becomes a bit of a vehicle to taking that data in and out of HubSpot, as an example, and potentially creating a bigger database. And it becomes an extra data source. It becomes an extra connector and integrator that gives you a better understanding of your customers and hopefully where you're spending your money.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, because we always try and break it down by what you optimize a campaign to versus what you report on, and quite often these days they should be different things. Algorithms work better with really recent data, data that's maybe got more stable trends. So if you're working with a business where the value of the conversion is really volatile and maybe it takes 14, 28, maybe longer in terms of days, sometimes you're far better off using a conversion signal that's happens far more recently, more stable patterns. And so I think that being able to split those two things out, so with a CRM, for example, you could look at lead scoring. We do that quite often, right? So we say, rather than optimize towards the final revenue in a lead gen journey, we'll define low, medium, and high quality leads, and we'll have an algorithm optimized towards that. But at the same time, it's still really important that we can do the financial reporting to the CFO by passing the final revenue data back, but it might not be the thing that we optimize the campaigns to. And I think that's kind of critical, I would say, for most of the lead gen businesses that we work together with. I think lead scoring is quite a common challenge that we come to you guys with.
Yeah.
And SGTM really helps with that as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does give us it does allow us, as you say, to pull all those levers. The other one being offline businesses.
Yep.
So if you've got a lead gen to a showroom and then there's a conversion in showroom, you're losing that. You can't see that as well. And that's where that Google Data Strength program really helps, because you've got things like Data Manager API, which allow you to take those offline sales and pull them back into the platforms, whether they're connecting. So ultimately, you're connecting the click to an offline conversion, and that's kind of what I mentioned around the automotive field. Obviously, similar thing. You actually start to see the revenue generated by your ads, which previously they wouldn't have done. They would have just seen click and then conversion at some point down in the future. But that cycle, automated on a daily basis, means that you can not waste money on campaigning to people who are already converted, and B, potentially create lookalike audiences and use the algorithms and use the huge knowledge bank that Meta and Google and others have got to be able to drive better performance of other campaigns, so that you're working smart, not hard, hopefully.
Yeah, makes total sense. And then I guess the other sort of use case for more e-commerce focused clients kind of works in exactly the same way, doesn't it? In that if you can join up your e-commerce platform or some variant of the data that comes out of the e-commerce platform, it's going to give you a much richer source of data as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, like you say, creating a bigger database. There's always, we talked about the different ways that different platforms measure. They've also got different metrics within them. So if you can start to join them together, then you get a better understanding of customers. I can't think of a good example right now, to be honest with you, but the idea of having Shopify integrated with Google, for example, they're gonna think in different ways, which is great.
Well, like so many e-commerce businesses are interested in new customer acquisition, for example, and that information isn't available off the bat. It isn't necessarily available client side only.
Yeah.
There might need to be some sort of lookups done in the back end. So pass that data into Google Cloud, have that integrate with SGTM, and then that enables you to optimize a campaign towards a new customer acquisition. And again, to go back to that original point, tell an algorithm to do a thing and it will probably go and do it. So if you tell it to optimize to all purchases, it's going to go for the low-hanging fruit. It's not going to prioritize new customers. New customers are harder to find. Tell the algorithm, go and find the new customers. It's going to get more of them. And it's all about translating that business KPI into something that the algorithm can actually use and learn from.
Yeah, that's completely fair. That makes total sense.
Okay, cool. So I think between us, we are probably in agreement that we've got no idea what's going to be happening in the world, probably further than 6 months, with all of the sort of advancements that are happening with AI and the way that the industry's going. It's pretty hard to predict what's going to be happening next week, let alone 6 months or beyond. But I think the direction of travel is more automation, more reliance on platform algorithms. Any sort of good advice on how you best prepare yourself for more of what we've already had?
I think this is where businesses almost need to look at themselves as an external. And what I mean by that is, like, what are AI platforms looking for? What are the algorithms looking for? How can you ultimately set your business up in a way that can be data read and data ready? Because then there'll be less work involved. We've talked with the team about data layers and structuring that data properly so that you can start to use it to segment. You can start to use it to power different cohorts and segments. I think that's the key. And it's been the same for about 10 years, to be honest with you. But now it's really coming down to it. And I think the gap between those businesses that have done that work and haven't done that work is going to be massive soon. Yeah, I think that covers it really. I mean, you can end up with an investment that you're going to have harder questions from more powerful people in boardrooms, because this isn't slowing down. Like you say, the automation is just going to get faster and faster, and your ROI is going to get weaker and weaker if you haven't got the right signals.
Yep.
That's
Even like as we move into everything being more focused around agentic AI, and everyone kind of looks at that and they think, I mean, so let's say that we're not talking about the point where AI gets sort of general intelligence. Let's say that we're not in that world, but even agentic AI, it isn't just a magic wand that you can throw, like point at something and it will just do it. It's totally reliant on the underlying data, the metadata, the data that you're surfacing to it.
Yep.
And if you're not giving it the right data, it's not going to be able to do the thing that you want. You're not going to be able to train it to automate all those processes that AI has the power to do. And so then it kind of becomes a little bit more about your underlying data. You need your kind of strategic people at the top. How do you translate that high level strategy into really specific metadata at the bottom, isn't it? And it's kind of cutting out that middle layer of human that would be doing a lot of the heavy lifting previously. And you've got two roles. It's the business strategy and then translating that into data that an algorithm can read.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to get to a point of agentic AI being hugely prevalent and someone typing into their computer or browser, go and find me the top 3 best places to find this backpack or whatever, is that AI going to go look at a site that hasn't got an easy data layer, has got schema that's all over the place, or is it going to go to the ones that are nicely structured, it can easily read, can ultimately take that data back and present it back to the user really fast? It's going to do the easy algorithm. It's going to make its life easy, because that's what it's been trained to do. It could, and humans can do the first version, which is read through all the schema, go through some horrid HTML, but ultimately it's much easier the other way. And then you can power more platforms off the same schema. You can use one solution for everything rather than multiple custom solutions, which ultimately probably break in the near future anyway.
So I guess the core theme of everything that we've been speaking about today is that things are only going to get more automated than they've been before. It's not new. This world of AI and algorithms and automation, we've been living through it for the last 10, 15, even 20 years. And probably now it's just moving at a greater pace. But fundamentally, the most important way of preparing yourself for the future is to make sure that you've got really solid data fundamentals and that you're surfacing the signals that those AI algorithms are going to learn from. So one key message is invest in having the best quality data possible that surface to the AI. I think that's the key thing that we've covered, and the key message from me. If you were to give 3 sort of sage pieces of advice to any CMO, CFO, marketing manager who's spending on advertising, on how they could prepare for what's to come in the coming years, what would they be?
Sage advice. I think first one would be, don't assume that it's someone else's responsibility. So everyone needs to be going in the same direction. Everyone should be investing themselves in this. And I guess a second one that kind of leads off that is, there are benefits to planning this out together. There are benefits to getting your company, or at least developers and marketers in the same room, speaking the same language and starting to understand, okay, how do we get there together? So first one is investing in and understanding what you need to do and making it worthwhile, whichever level you're at, whether you're at the top level, bottom level, whatever it might be, there's definitely value in doing that. Second one is making sure that people get around the room together and actually propose something, make a change, like start a project. Don't just sort of go, yeah, we'll get to that. And then the third one is understand what you're trying to do within those platforms, and level that back into the second part, which is, if I'm answering these questions, what kinds of data do I need to put into those platforms? And that planning, it will make you feel informed, but also gives you a bit more direction in the platforms, rather than just sort of going, here's my money, Google, good luck with it. It hopefully gives you that opportunity to encourage a better outcome.
So if you're a CEO or a CMO of a business and you know exactly what you're trying to achieve within that business, you should be asking your marketing team, how does this high-level business strategy translate to what we're doing within the ad platforms?
Exactly that.
Nice.